Hi, good evening, everyone. So, as promised, we have one more conversation. We have had numerous since yesterday Q&As and also one long conversation yesterday. So now the conversation is going to be between Professor Nikhila, Professor Nikhila teaches film studies at English and Foreign Language University in Hyderabad. And she's a well-known film scholar, writes quite a bit about not just film, but also cultural studies scholar, what we can say. So, yeah, so Professor Nikhila and Girish Kasaravalli will be in conversation. The focus of this conversation is a little bit different from yesterday. Yesterday, we tried to focus a little bit on Girish Kasaravalli's early influences, his growth as a filmmaker, and his artistic process, and his artistic views. Today, what we are going to do is talk more about his films generally. Of course, it will be wide open for Nikhila to go into areas she wants to, but we will try and also, talk about thematic concerns which he engages with, and also the eternal debate about form versus content, which is a never-ending debate in filmmaking. So that's going to be the crux of the conversation. So may I now invite Mr. Girish Kasaravalli on stage and Professor Nikhila. A round of applause, please.
Good evening to all of you. A very good evening, sir. It's my pleasure to be in conversation with you once again. It was in 2018 in Hyderabad at the Hyderabad Literary Festival that we had a very, very interesting conversation. In fact, Basav's brief to me was to repeat or reprise the conversation, which probably will not happen, I think, this time. So I have a set of questions on a variety of films. I've made my notes. I wanted even back then to ask you a whole lot of questions specific to your films. But before we get to the films per se, one of the things that I find very interesting about you as a filmmaker, and particularly as a filmmaker who came into the filmmaking milieu, the parallel cinema milieu, you were probably one of the first filmmakers trained in FTII, trained as a filmmaker. I mean, there was Girish Karnad, there were B.V. Karanth coming to cinema from drama. But there you were probably one of the earliest to come into cinema. I think that your FTII training, and this is the way I read the influence of the training on you, I feel that training has made you a very theoretically self-conscious filmmaker. I mean, you can account for your choices. Maybe other filmmakers are more instinctive in their approach, whereas you can account for, as you were telling us, why you chose a particular method, the cinema verity method for filming certain parts of Gulabi Takis. So I think the training at FTII gave Indian or Kannada parallel cinema a very unique voice and a unique filmmaker. Can you tell us a little bit about your curriculum, about the way in which cinema was taught? Because there are a whole lot of young people here. You came from your training in B Pharma to go into the Film Institute. There are people here probably aspiring to be filmmakers, engineers, other professionals who want to get into filmmaking. Here is someone, an example of coming into filmmaking and succeeding.
Good evening. In fact, I am the second filmmaker to emerge from FTII. The first one was K.M. Shankarappa. He is from the first batch, Manikol batch, you know. Unfortunately, his diploma film was very, very interesting. It's called Water in the Tap, based on a Kannada short story by K. Sadashiva. Unfortunately, he made just one film, and that film also was not very important, it didn't turn out to be an significant this one. But it is true, my training at FTA shaped me as a filmmaker. Because yesterday I explained to you how I was not at all exposed to cinema at all, and then I was selected, and then I stepped into the FTA and I started, watching classics. So I didn't watch popular cinema and then move into classics. I started with classics and ended with, watching classics. The rigorous training at FTA really made me a filmmaker. I must confess that. In fact, the structure of FTA course is really very well, structured. We had, in the first year, we had basics, and in the second year, we had theory. And Professor Nirad Mahapatra taught us film theory. He's a filmmaker, He made one of the most brilliant films in the Indian one called My America, Oriya film. And for nearly 6 to 8 months, we were taught from early film theories to Bazin, and Bazin was the last one. And by the time I passed out, Christian myths was being discussed, but I'm not, that is much later. And in fact, my foundation was quite strong, especially as Eisensteinian and Bazinian theories. And that's the reason why when I pick up a form, we deliberate a lot on that. Why particularly this form, what is its philosophy, what is its politics, and how it goes with the plot. You said subject, this one, what is it? Content versus form. I never say it's content versus form. Content goes hand in hand with the form. There's no dichotomy between content and the form, because content dictates form, and form in turn gives a shape to content. And we studied that for about 6 to 8 months, and then, there are two things which helped me a lot. One is analysis of the film, decoding, deconstruction of the film. We would be shown a film, and then the next day, they would analyze the film shot by shot. In fact, Professor Satish Bahadur would go for 3 months just for one film, Patre Panchali, or for Rashomon. He would go shot by shot. Why this particular shot was composed in this way, and how did this, composition worked? How did this graphics worked? How does this, sound track help? So that is one way of understanding film, and my book is all about it. Trying to understand cinema through the images and not through the plot. See, there are two ways of interpreting film, One is through the plot, and the concepts and the ideas that emerge by following the plot. There's another way of looking at it, that is from the basics, from the elements. That is, for me, the images are the elements of the filmmaking. So first we try to understand images, and through images we try to understand and decode, deconstruct the film. So that's how we were taught, and it helped me a lot. I keep telling my friends the difference between an FTI trained, not FTI, any film school trained student, filmmaker, and a filmmaker who joins as an assistant director and comes up the ladder and becomes a director is that they know the technique. We know the technique, also the philosophy of it. So this is something which outsider won't understand. They find it very difficult because unfortunately in India, we always look at it as a kind of this one for mass production. We don't look at film and its philosophy. We don't look at the form and its philosophy. In fact, once when I was in the jury, I was very surprised because in all scenes, the scene would start with a shot, with this one, and then the camera would go up, and then they cut into all the details, and then it would come down, and the scene ends. So Sunny Joseph was a co-juror. I asked him, Sunny, what is this whole logic? I don't understand. Why should every scene, have this kind of a design? He said, for the simple fact that, when you book the camera, the crane comes with it. I said, that is not the way to make films, You should have some philosophy to your movement, for composition, for lens, for your sound design, for your music and things like that, So that is the advantage. I won't say advantage or disadvantage. I will say that's my philosophy. That became my philosophy of filmmaking.
I happened to watch the diploma film that you made, sir, when you were a student in FTII. I was fascinated that it was actually there and it was accessible. The other thing, and for those of you who don't know, this particular film, Avsesh, won the President's Award for the Best Student Film. Short film in 1975.
Those days they called it as experimental short.
So in 1975, it was called. It won the National Film Award for the Best Short Film for the President's Medal, I think. So what I found interesting when I was reading your Bimba and Bimbana book was you mentioned that in that short film, you were not allowed to choose the language. You had to make the film in Hindi. So the question that came up to me then was this question of language in cinema. Did it seem that for this particular subject, given that it was based in a particular kind of milieu, so you required Kannada for that? Or is it in general that you felt that you required to make films only in Kannada? So did you choose your language of filmmaking in that sense?
There are quite a few filmmakers in the world who would make films in the language they don't understand at all. But there are people like, Adur Gopal Krishna, who refuse to make films in any other language than Malayalam. Whereas Ray made films in Hindi also. And Mrinal Sen has the distinction of making it in 5 languages. Including Telugu. He made it in Telugu, Bengali, Oriya, Hindi and English. Yeah. I can't, visualize making films in a language in which I don't have fluency and don't have competence to judge. Because for me, the dialogues are very important. And for me, the dialogues are not just to convey meaning. No, they are the essence. They also convey my philosophy, my politics. I say this, the politics, because you see, which I have written about it in my book. I learned it from Kannada Dalit literature, how the language can become a political instrument. And for me, the language is a political instrument. So I refuse to do films in another language. The only film which I made in Hindi was Mane, because NFTC insisted, because I wanted a bigger budget. They said, if you want to do it in Kannada, we can't give you the budget. So you make it in 2 languages, bilingual, Kannada and Hindi. And I made films in both the languages, and the film suffered, and that's the end of it. I refuse to do any more films in any other language. See, when I say language, I don't mean, it's not very difficult to follow the language. Like, say, Telugu, I don't understand Telugu, but if given that this one, I note down all the intonation, things like that, then I follow what he's saying and all that. But that is not the thing, you see. There you are only following the content, plot, this one, essence. You're following the meaning. but you also have to follow the essence, follow the politics, follow the subtle. Like you see, there's a difference between using words, One needs to understand why that particular word has been used. So if you don't understand that, you might ask me the question, does it really matter? After all, we look, we see a Polish film or an Iranian film by its subtitles. How does it matter? It may not matter in that sense, but if you're very sincere, then the language itself becomes an instrument, So I think it's Gerald Mast who says, in whichever way you subtitle a film, it's not going to convey the meaning of the real text of the film. Because there are many more things which the subtitle won't explain. If there's a graffiti on the wall, the subtitle won't explain. The context, you don't get it. See, I'll tell you a small example. In Tabarna Kate, in my film Tabarna Kate, there is a scene when the Tabara goes to meet Bantiappa. Bantiappa is in a chai shop. But the song that is being played on the soundtrack is not a Kannada song. It's a Tamil song from Pasamalar. So if you are a filmmaker, if you know the language, then you question this. Why is a Tamil film there? Then suddenly you realize it's a tea estate and the workers are all from Tamil Nadu. That is a subtext which subtitles will not convey you. That's why Gerald Mast says the subtitling will not convey the meaning. So one has to really understand all the subtleties. Like, this man has written a book on me, on my films. What is his name? This Australian critic. John Wood. Sorry, I'm so unfair. I'm not. He asked me this question. Why does the widow, the Thai Sahib, Akka Sahib wears white and Venkat Lakshmi in Nine Edo wears red? Both are widows. Why this color difference? So I had to explain him the context. Because she is from northern part of Karnataka, where the influence is from Maharashtra, North India. Whereas Venkat Lakshmi is from the middle part of Kannada. So they wear red. So there the color is not only a detail, it's a politics itself. So one need to understand these kind of things, So that's why I prefer to do films not only in Kannada but also in the milieu, which I understand. In fact, many of my films are located in my own hometown, in my own village, and in my 3 of my films are, shot in my own house, like Gatashraddha. Because I am familiar with that, and the architecture I am familiar with. See, architecture also is a politics for me. It's not a visual detail, it's a politics.
The question of language leads me to the question of literature. And I think I had asked this question in a different way because I had understood it differently in 2018. Back then I had asked you, most of your films are based on literary texts. You start with Navya writers and Navyottara, Dalita, Bandaya, Mahila, Muslim. So I was saying that virtually with your films you can trace the Kannada literary trend. And I had stopped at that. I think when I was rewatching some of your films recently, I feel that what you're doing is like the work of an English translator. That is an English translator who translates a Kannada text. That is, you're making this text, recontextualizing this text for a larger audience, and also the discourses that are familiar to that English-knowing audience. So in a way, you are recontextualizing films that come from a specific region, located in a specific, linguistic terrain, and taking it to an audience, a larger global and national audience, and therefore it is like a discursive transformation that is being wrought through your films. You can take the example of Vaidehi's film, your film based on Vaidehi's text that we just saw, Gulabi Talkies. What happens to Gulabi Talkies when you bring in to play the discussions on globalization, on privatization. So it's like a different discourse, a discursive universe which your films inhabit. And I was also reading in Bimba Bimbana that you're saying that it's important for a filmmaker to be an engaged filmmaker. So does it mean engaged with the contemporary discourses at the national and global level? Is that your preparation? So is it that you're looking for Kannada films that help you to engage with some of these discourses?
In fact, when I set out to make a film, my primary concerns are what are the dialogues that are going in our ambience, in our this particular time and space. Some certain this one are being discussed all the while. Certain preoccupations, certain concerns, and that. If one is very sensitive to it, he or she can absorb all these things. That is what makes me decide on which subject or which content, which plot I should take. I don't care much for its literary value. I have adopted works of great writers of Kannada like Ananthamurthy, Tejasvi and others. I have also worked with very popular this one. It's not only me, I've also seen people, major filmmakers like Ray himself has worked with Vibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay as well as Shankar, right? So one should, that should never be the criterion at all. The literary part, this one. How can that story lend itself to the cinematic rendering? That is very important. This is my opinion that all great works, literary works, may not lend themselves to filmmaking. Otherwise, people would have done Ulysses, very effectively on film. What was the first part of the question, actually?
Yeah, so I was saying that many of your films engage with the contemporary discourse.
In fact, when I set out to make the film, these concerns, the literary concerns do not bother me at all. It is the socio-political issues that I can invest in the film, in that story, that bothers me much, What kind of philosophical, political and social statements that I make. Yesterday I was explaining how I first see how relevant it is to today's India. Then after that I also look for it something which is universal. So it should, at the same time, it should be local as well as universal. If it is purely today's concern, I'm not so much bothered, so much concerned about it. That doesn't impress me much. Probably that is one of the reasons why I move towards formal elements also, you see. Because form is one thing which makes the content universal.
One of the reasons why I keep going back to your films again and again and again is because there are such amazing women characters in your film. For instance, Yamunakka in Ghata Shraddha. Not the Yamunakka of Ananthamurthy's Ghata Shraddha, who is already a shaven widow, but the one whose head is shaved off in the end as a punishment, as the symbol of excommunication. So there's something very, very poignant about that final moment when Nani sees Yamunaka from behind a tree. So that's a very, very moving moment. And there are several such moving moments and female characters in many of your films. For instance, Nagi, the struggle of Nagi, and not being understood, becoming isolated. You have yourself said she becomes an island in the end. It's not, Dvipa is not the physical island, Dvipa is Nagi. I mean, that is such an amazing insight for a filmmaker to have, to characterize a woman character in this fashion. Also, my own personal favorite is Tai Saheba. Yesterday, all of you would have watched Tai Saheba. Again, the kind of, her husband is the one who is into the nationalist movement, but it is Tai Saheba who has learnt the lessons of modernity, much more probably than her husband, and also learnt what it means to be empathetic with her son's predicament and so on. Venkatalakshmi, again, so different from Bhairappa's Venkatalakshmi. This one is, she chooses what to believe. If people want to interpret her actions in a particular way, she knows exactly why she's doing what she's doing. So in that sense, I feel that, you're one of the filmmakers, probably one of the very few filmmakers who have created this whole cast of, women characters whom people like me, who are so disillusioned generally with Indian cinema, would like to visit again and again, take to our classrooms, show it as examples of not just good and great cinema, but also good examples of, female characterization, empathy, and the way in which their strength of character, dignity, all these stand out. So what is it that goes behind this thinking process that makes you this special kind of a filmmaker?
Part of it, I think, I explained yesterday. But there are certain things which I would like to highlight here. See, in Tai Saheba, for example, it's Appa Sahib versus Tai Sahib. And why I have a greater admiration for Tai Saheba is that Appa Saheba tries to understand socio-political changes through intellect. He is aware of the nationalist movement, and whereas Tai Saheba is unaware of the nationalist movement, but she reacts through heart. For me, that is more important, because it's the emotions which makes her take that bold step, not Appa Sahib. Because Appa Sahib, goes into a shell, whereas Tai Saheba comes out of the shell, comes out of Wade, and liberates herself and strengthens the other part. She befriends Chandri. She transcends of caste barrier. That is, because that is one of the things, we have forgotten to respond from the heart. Most of the time, people who are very intellectuals, they think from the, brain, from the head. It should be a combination of head and the heart. And that's why, for me, that is more important. Sometimes, the last sentence of Gulabi in Gulabi Takis, for me it's very significant. She says, "What are you going to do, Gulabi?" He says, "I don't care. So far as, so long as the women become, pregnant, I have the job. It's for you who are the sufferers." That kind of a decision, or that kind of realization of one's own potential, is what I look for in my characters. Yamunaka is the only exception. All the other characters have that kind of a realization. They know their strength, including Hasina. Including Hasina. Hasina refuses to accept the compensation because she says, now my daughter is dead, I don't need your help. I know how to stand on my own. This is, for me, it's a kind of a great, I have great admiration for such kind of a stance,
Related to this question of women, female characters in your film, there are also some very interesting little boys in your film, and there is a very warm bond between the male boys and the female characters. Not all of whom, in fact, many of them are either adopted or have no relation with each other, and yet it's a very strong kind of a maternal bond. I have in mind films. This starts probably from Avsesh itself. I liked it very much. There's a line in Avsesh which says, this young boy says, my father married my mother, so I'm going to marry your mother. Which is the grandmother. So there are such lovely moments in your film. And then Nani and Yamunaka, tender but also very conflicted. And unlike Anantmurthy's short story, Nani here is very empathetic at some level and non-judgmental. Babu is an orphan in Tabaranakate. And again, this idea of the boy being an orphan character, not someone whom you love because he's your own son or whatever, but Addu in Gulabi Talkies, Murthy in Kraurya. So my question is, this is an observation that I was wondering if you will agree with. There are 3 girls in Hasina. And the mother works for the 3 girls. And she her work has to fulfill, in some ways, what they lack. Whereas the boys in your films always seem to be the ones fulfilling some kind of a lack in the women or in the mother-like characters. So I was just wondering, it's not, this is not Oedipal in the classic sense. This is not even reverse Oedipal in A.K. Ramanujan's sense. This is your own brand of, relation between mother and son, or mother-like and son-like in many of your films. I wonder what you want to say about it.
Some of such observations I can really have no answers, for that. Once a critic asked me, he said, in many of your films, the central character, they don't have children. Why is it so? I said, it was a revelation for me itself, I said, oh my God, it's true. Yamunaka doesn't have a child, and Nagi doesn't have a child, and even Thai Saiba and Kanasemba Kudureyanneri, Rudri, and all this. It's not conscious. But can I really say it's not conscious? It's not true. Somewhere deep within me, I think, creating a women character without a child probably gives me some kind of a element so that I can knit the film on that. Longing for some kind of a motherly affection for the child, and for a child, this one for the mother, which is there in all my films. They all long for some kind of a affection from somebody. Even Thai Saheba, she gets no support from her own husband. It's the boy who gives her the support. And Gulabi is not, Gulabi wants her, some kind of this one, and it is Addu who gives her the. So that's one reason why I have these kind of, characters, in all my films. A barren mother and the son, adopted son. Or the other reason, of course, is quite obvious why I have, a child in the central character. Because child, they always personify the kind of, innocence. Their decisions are not calculated. Whether it is Appa Sahib or Thai Sahib, they all have certain do's and don'ts within their minds. Whereas children, whether it is Hari in Avashesh or the Naga in my latest film, they don't care much for the societal concerns or societal points of view. They are natural. They decide what is right for them, ethically. That ethics is something which I discuss in all my films. And I use the characters as a kind of a pointer to highlight those things. Addu, say for example, in Gulabi Takis, he is quite friendly with his mother as well as his stepmother. There's no value attached to it. That is where it gives me a kind of a counterpoint to the kind of this one value system that the elders have in the film, whether it is Tabra or Venkat Lakshmi or Gulabi. So it balances the film in a way. It's one way of trying to bring in balance in the film.
I don't know if I haven't actually read too much about Akramana, whereas many of these other films are quite discussed. And so this was after Ghatashraddha, probably, your next film. And it's so different in tone. It's based on B.V. Vaikunthraju's novel. What you do in the film at one level is, in some ways, use techniques which one does not find in any of your later films. For instance, the voiceover. The voiceover which is ironic, which is distancing, which is acting like a commentary on the central character's actions. Also, it's divided into chapters like the novel would be. So I'm wondering, is it again, were you trying to get away, as far away from the Ghatashraddha mode? Is that why?
Actually, breaking the narrative into chapters is there in all my films. It's there in Kanasemba Kudureyanneri, it's there in Thai Sahib, it's there in, Nine Erlu. One of the reasons, it's there even in Tavarana Kathe, Dvipa. One of the reasons that, I don't want audience to get carried away by the emotions. So it's a kind of a technique wherein I distance the narration, I break the narration so that audience get distanced from the narration. They don't get involved totally. It's a kind of alienation technique for me. But what was the question?
The voiceover technique.
Sorry, Akramana. It's about Akramana.
Yeah, about
Akramana was, I've written about it in my book. It was not my choice. I didn't want to make that film. But what happened, I was supposed to work with a director as his editor and the art director. But unfortunately, the project, there was a condition between the producer and the director, and the project fell through. Then the Vaikuntraju insisted that, somehow the film should be made. It was for him, it was then he forced me, he asked me whether if I could take it over. There's a kind of a compulsion because that was and everyone suggested not to antagonize, antagonize. B.V. Vaikuntraju was very powerful at that time. And that is the only film in my career where the script is not written by me. It's written by Sadashiv. It's another very important writer, I understand. See, my method of working is quite different from the others. I don't write the script like the way the novel is written, I write the visuals. If I don't, if I can't see visuals in my mind, I don't write the script. In fact, when T.N. Sitaram narrated the story of Kraurya, suddenly, the last detail which he said, when he said the boy abandons his old grandmother, runs away, fearing that he would be arrested. And that image I caught on. And from there I started working back and wrote the script. So when I read a story or when I sit down to discuss the story, such details emerge, the visual details, oral details, the images. That's why the title of the book is Bimba. Bimba is not for me the visual images, it's actually the image that are formed in the mind of the viewer. How do I create that image? That was that became. So unless I get a clear picture, I won't be able to write the script. So when the script written by Sadashiva was handed over to me, I didn't know why this particular scene is there, why does it start with this, why does it end with that, what is the character graph, what is the action graph, nothing is clear. So I just followed the script. Whatever is written, I followed. And sometimes I wondered, why is this scene? I used to ask my cinematographer, do you know why this particular scene is there? If it is written by me, I would say why I need that script, that particular detail. But here I was totally, So what did I do? I just went on following whatever is written. In the book I have written, there is a dream sequence in Akramana, which I sincerely followed. Even today I don't know why I did it, because that is a cheap imitation of a scene from Wild Strawberries. And Wild Strawberries scene is such a major scene. It's a landmark in the history of cinema. It's the biggest. Even Ray tried to imitate it and failed. In Nayak, there is a scene, the same similar dream. Ray himself couldn't match Bergman's caliber. Why did I do it? Knowing pretty well that, this is a cheap imitation of a scene from Wild Strawberries. But then it was there in the script. So I had to follow it. I followed it. And whenever I see the film, I feel very, very, why did I make this kind of stupid... So that's the reason. That's after that, I never based any of my films on the script written by someone else, because my style of writing the script is quite different, and my cameraman follow it very well because everything is in visuals and things like that. Outside, others may not be able to read my scripts. So that's about Akramana, yes.
But it's not a film that you need to be ashamed of. I liked it quite a bit, sir.
I know.
Because the two women characters, for instance, who in some ways act like a way of teaching the central protagonist what it means to interact with women and so on. So there is a certain Girish Kasaravalli touch as well.
In the book also I have written about it. Had I made the film now, it would have been different because I would have taken that subject very seriously. At that time I was very flippant, something is written, so let us do it. I didn't know why it is there, and that a lot of things, it's quite gimmicky at places. Why did I resort to that kind of gimmick? I never do that kind of gimmicks in my films. But Akramana, when I made the film, it was quite novel. A lot of people, said, what is this, quite different. There's a scene where the central character says, what I do and what I speak, there's no, coherence. There is no correlation between what I do and what I think, something like that. And as she goes on talking, the lip sync starts going out sync, So, what I'm trying to, it's so gimmicky. Not, and I won't say gimmicky, but it is so, what is the correct word? I don't know. But literal, it's too literal. But a lot of people liked it. Oh, said, oh, what a fantastic imagination and all that. But I thought it's very amateurish,
When in 2018 you came to Hyderabad and we had organized a film festival, a retrospective of new wave films, including your films, and we had brought out a small booklet called Samantara in that context. My colleague, Dr. Parthsarathi, about your film Kanasemba Kudureyanneri, he wrote that what he finds striking about Kanasemba Kudureyanneri film, which you will all be watching soon, is that usually the question of caste in Indian cinema is dealt within a social realist kind of narrative mode, framework. Whereas in your film, he says what you use is a kind of modernist aesthetic. And you show that modernism, it's not a modernism versus realism, but modernism and realism going together. This whole surreal waiting for Siddha, and does he come, does he not come, what happens after that. So it's a different language itself for treating caste. So again, was it like a conscious decision with the kind of filmmaking practice that you wanted to adopt? And it's very difficult to move away when you're saying, I want to deal with the question of caste, to move away from the social realist framework. So why this mode?
Well, when I set out to do this film, we consciously decided to do away with the realistic narration altogether. And whatever I have done, I'm quite happy about it. And one is one of my, film which is very close to me and very happy with the output. It's a little confusing, I know. It's because it's zigzag narration. You keep on seeing the same thing, seen again and again. But see, prior to it, I have done a film wherein I try to understand the politics of image, which is actually the money. Then I try to understand the politics of imaging. I make a difference between image and the imaging. Image is what we see on the screen. Imaging is what goes behind the screen, the way, the lens that you use, the angle that you use, the height that you use, everything is a politics for me. I have used that in Gulabi Taki, something like that. And then I suddenly realized, well, we have a politics even while narrating a story, event. If I want to impress you, my tone will be different. If I want to tell you that I am the, deprived, my tone will be different. And you as a listener, you follow your own politics of understanding the narration. If I am a decently dressed person, then you think what I am saying is true. If he's a beggar, you think he's lying. So there's some kind of a politics, even the way how we listen to the story. It is not, they are not apolitical. Nothing is apolitical in cinema. Visual is not apolitical. People say I make only popular films. I know my film is devoid of politics. It's impossible. You cannot do you cannot compose a single shot without your politics. It comes to you. That's why I use the term Rajakiyate in the book. It's not politics, it's Rajakiyate. See, even the way how I sit, this is a politics for me. This is politics for me. It expresses your, it's a statement. It expresses your concerns, it expresses your attitude. So I wanted that, this film, particularly Kanasemba Kudureyanneri, how we look at Dalit politics as such. There are three versions, and people look at it from three different perspectives. In all the three perspectives, the third one is not the real one. It's the imagine. It's my own wishful thinking. How I wish Dalits adopt this lifestyle. But why do I repeat the same story twice? It's about three dreams. I shouldn't be talking about it because you are going to watch it now. It's about three dreams, but each dream is repeated twice. I narrate the same dreams twice. So that means, you're seeing four narration plus the fifth one, which is my dream. So there I take upon, I criticize, there is one slightly radical rationalist person. I question his attitude also. There is one very, hierarchical, feudal hierarchy is there, and I question that. I question this Dalit man. I question everything. I question Siddha. Siddha is their lord. So, there I am, the attitude towards our own narration. That's why it's a little complex and it's not that simple, I know. It's confusing. Many people, come back and say, I didn't understand the film at all because you are saying the same story again and again. And I keep telling them that is the story of the film. Looking at the same thing again and again.
Actually, I was, when you were mentioning about politics, I had to tell you, when we invited you to our university, one of the questions I got asked by the administration is Girish Kasaravalli a political filmmaker? And I didn't know how to answer that question. Regarding this last film that we watched, Kurmavatara, I was telling you informally, I find the film somewhat bleak compared to Gulabi Talkies. Because as you said, there is this affirming voice in Gulabi Talkies in the end where she says, as long as there are women and they will give birth, I'll eke out my livelihood. Whereas here is Kurmavatara, there's something so out of joint. And it's not bleak, because you have made it bleak. I'm saying that these are the times, these are the bleak times that we are living in where many of us feel out of joint. So in that sense, I feel both these films, 2008, Gulabi Talkies and Kurmavatara, you were so prescient. You're kind of seeing what is coming. You're seeing the way in which many of us feel that we don't belong to the present. Also, you talked about Kurmavatara as this, avatar based on this Vishnu's avatar. While watching the film, more and more, as you watch the character Gandhi, the one who plays Gandhi, he starts looking like his gait becomes not so much like Gandhi, but like the tortoise. So it is as if we are saying that we belong to a time, which is of the past, which does not find a mention here. So at that point in time, was it that you were seeing that where things were going? And is that why the tone is so bleak? Or what is it about the film which makes at least me very, very uneasy to watch?
So I made this film in 2009 when this Anna Hazare movement was at its peak. And that's when I started questioning what does Gandhi mean to me? What does Gandhiism mean to the present civilization, present-day civilization? I'm also a bitter critic of globalization, which is there in money. not for its material conflict. I know globalization is going to bring a lot of material conflict, comforts. But my objection to globalization, it's going to affect your value system. What is right, what is wrong, what is ethics, what is not ethics. Because with the globalization, we are moving towards utilitarian society. And in one sense, this film talks about the same, continues the same argument. Which one? The Kurmavatara. Gandhi talks about living close to nature. He says, nature can satiate everyone's needs, but not greed. So, but the consumerist society is making us more greedy. So, how can we practice Gandhian values, Gandhian ideals in a consumerist society? It's not possible. Though we all say that, austerity and the minimalism is the key factor for future, we can't practice it. I know what is right, but I can't practice it. So what kind of narration you can keep for this? So it's a kind of despair where, you say, this is right, but it is not possible. We know what is happening in the society today is not right, but we can't stop it. That's what is there in the tone of the film is that, you see, I know when the actor says, please, shoot me today and end I am fed up with Gandhi, playing Gandhi. There's some kind of a tinge of helplessness, nirashavada. It's not really nirashavada, it's some kind of a hatasha, despair.
Then let's now open it out to the audience. And any questions, any comments? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Nandini Vaidyanathan. I'm Nikhila's sister. I come from a corporate background. So normally when we work with entrepreneurs, we always tell them your product is not important, your company is not important. Why you do what you do is what is important, is what will determine the future of your organization. So what is your why?
Why you do, I can undo, but see, when we say why are we doing it, we have some kind of a goal, right? And we never question that goal. We think that is ultimate. The problem lies there. We know the goal, but the path is also equally important.
Not only that, I think there is a significant difference between goal and purpose.
Goal and
is
purpose.
Always achievable, but purpose is what defines the meaning in your life.
Yeah, but then you see, for that also, you need to have a path.
Yeah.
The problem is the path. What path do we take? Are we taking the path which is ethical, or are we taking a path which is beneficial? If you ask this question, not many people are able to answer this.
But what is your why? Why do you do what you do? Why do you live the way you do?
I can't answer.
I sound like I'm badgering you.
No, I can't answer that question. I don't understand. I don't even understand that question. Yes.
Okay. Looking back at all the films you have made, if you were to look back and would you feel that you would make it differently today, or would you make it similarly? Those movies which you have made?
Yeah, that's a question which again, another hypothetical question, I won't be able to answer it. Because when I make the film, there are certain compulsions, certain responses. It is a response to some issues. The issue has changed, the time has changed, the space has changed. If you ask me to do the same story now, I may not be able to do it. I won't be able to do it. It's a response to time and space.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, sir. My question is on the form and content, part, and I want to bring it to the practicing filmmakers today. As you said, filmmakers who have studied in the institution have more knowledge, they are more informed on the technology part of it, and they have a strong hold on the form. But whereas self-taught filmmakers, there are so many filmmakers because of the easy digitization today, and they focus only on the content. There was a question recently about like how cinema is dying. I understand it is on the part of the, there are no new experiments in the form, and cinema as an art is dying and all that. And the answer was like, I don't want to believe in that, because as long as we have stories, we will keep making cinema. But we focus there only on the content part of it. We do not focus on the form. But as I said, filmmakers who have this training, who studied in an institution, have strong hold on the form. And also, when I watch the contemporary filmmakers around me, the films of certain filmmakers who have this institutional affiliation have a stronger hold on the form, and not the, I wouldn't generalize it, but still definitely self-taught filmmakers or filmmakers who do not have institutional affiliation focus only on the content. They do not have a hold on the form. So what would be your advice to address this issue?
Vilasini is herself a filmmaker. Vilasini is herself a filmmaker.
Yeah. There are any number of filmmakers in the world over, who haven't gone to any film schools. Yet they are, like Satyajit Ray and Mrunal Sen are the two best examples. Satyajit Ray didn't go to any film school, but he studied films on his own. If you study his, the way how he prepared himself for making films, you understand it's a pakka film school kind of preparation. Today you don't need to go to film schools at all, because in YouTube you get any number of insights. Unfortunately, people don't see that. You can just open this one and see how the kind of preparations Kurosawa did for while doing Seven Samurai, or Kiarostami did for his film. But we don't see it. So those are the details, those are the things which we learned in the institute.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, deconstruction of the scene.
Sir, I just want to ask, maybe if you can give us an example of, you said form shapes content, and of course, content also inspires form. So if we take example of any of your film which we have screened here, for example, and if you can detail it out for us, how you chose a certain form for a certain story or a film. And also, the second part of this small question is that for a formalist, your films are very strong narratively, right? If we say, for example, think of formalists like Manikal or Kumar Shani, where form was everything, the narrative was not so much important. So maybe some thoughts on that also. So, but first the example.
Yeah, I think I have explained that in the, when did I do that? About Gulabi Takis, I said, why did I use verite? Because that's not a film about Gulabi. It's also a film about the community. Whereas all my other films, they talk about a situation through a character. But Gulabi is an exception, wherein I also talk about the situation through the community itself. So I wanted to have two different kind of styles. One is conventional narrative, analytical narrative style, which I used for Gulabi. The other is verite, which I used for community. The community part, I wanted it to look like documentary. shouldn't be using the term documentary because when I say that term, it becomes derogatory. No. Documentary is a real, it's a form, not I would say actuality coverage. I wanted the second part to have. Similarly, Gatashraddha, the title itself says it's about a ritual. Gatashraddha is a ritual. So while I was looking for the thing, I was wondering what form it should have. Then it occurred to me it should have a ritualistic style. The whole film is constructed like a ritual. Unfortunately, we don't give that kind of importance to the form in the Indian analysis. We say Thai Sahiba and Gatashraddha are similar. They are not similar at all. Gatashraddha has a very ritualistic style because the film is about ritual. And all the scenes are constructed like a ritual. The mise-en-scene is like a ritual. The short compositions are like a ritual. Whereas in my other films, I think the only other fourth film which I can quote is Kurmavatara. I have not used that at all, which is more linear. Gatashraddha is more like circle. This is more linear. Whereas Thai Sahiba, in fact, it is many layers. It has many layers. Appa Sahib's layer and Thai Sahib's layer. So I'm trying to understand history through these characters, through these four. It has a different structure altogether. That's one part of thing. It's not only about the style, it's also about the form, the details. Which lens I should use. Like in Gatashraddha, I have not used telephoto except in 2 sequences. I wanted everything to be in 50 because I am repeating myself. It is all there in the book. I have written about it, why I have used only...
It requires an English translation. Many of the people here. So.
It is there in the book. Yeah. I have used why I have used movement for one film and static in another film. Why I have used telephoto in one film, not telephoto. I have not used telephoto in any films, but I have used wide angles and normal angles. Why I have used this kind of a lighting style for Kurmavatara, which is not there in Gatashraddha. All these things I have discussed in the book. It's not about, it's only about the form. Why I have used it, especially about Dvipa, the structure of the film, where it is a kind of a inverted pyramid. Why did I use an inverted pyramid structure for that? Whereas for Gulabi Tech is, where it keeps on opening up. All these things I have discussed. So it's more about the form as a politics, form as politics. That book is about that.
Yeah. Okay.
So on the prashne, modlu art films antane separate agi barodu, commercial movies anta there was a distinction between 2 forms of filmmaking. ಈಗ ಅದನ್ನು ಬೇರೆ ಥರ ಕರೀತಾರೆ, ಆಫ್ ಬೀಟ್ ಅಂತಾರೆ, ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಹೆಸರು. ಅದು ಯಾಕೆ ಆ ಡಿಸ್ಟಿಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಹೋಗಿದೆ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತಾ ನಿಮಗೆ ಈಗ?
See, we never use those terms. These are the terms used by the critics. They wanted, this one to differentiate this kind of film from the other one. So they said art film and the commercial film. When I set out to make the film, I said, this is going to be the most commercial film. I want my producers to make money. But it doesn't. That's it. But there are terms used by the journalists while they are writing columns. I don't differentiate my film as art or commercial. I'll say I make film. That's it. But nothing more than that,
But Brunal Sen wrote a manifesto for new cinema movement. So where the director is the center, auteur is the center. So in some ways, yours is a very auteur-centric.
That my film is an auteur film, that I agree. Auteur is a French term, which means, like in in literature, the work, that fiction becomes writer's fiction. Whereas in Hollywood mode of filmmaking, the director comes and directs, and the editor comes and edits, and photographer comes and photographs. So, as opposed to that, the French wanted it to be like the way how the writers write. So somebody should be able to answerable for all the things, and that is director. So they called director an auteur. So we are all auteurs. Whether I work with this cameraman or that cameraman, I decide the compositions, and they execute it. So I do that in consultation with the cinematographer. But then final say will be the director. I decide, I sit with the editor and say what pace should the film have. When I said, for politics, I would like to quote one quotation from Louis Buñuel. He said that tempo of the film, the rhythm of the film is the political statement of the filmmaker. So what a fantastic statement it is. We say it's a slow-paced film, but he doesn't say, no, it's a political statement. The slowness itself is a political statement.
Hi, sir. Yesterday you mentioned you have been influenced by some of the Asian filmmakers and some European and even Bergman. So you must have watched those films with subtitles, right? So if you have been influenced by watching a movie with subtitles, and then today I've mentioned it is you need more subtext to understand a film, right? So I mean, why do you make a choice to include yourself into? I mean, you could have made the same similar influence on the other people without having those subtext, right? If your plot speaks a point.
See, one of my favorite films in the history of cinema is Wild Strawberries, Bergman's Wild Strawberries. But being an Indian, I don't know the significance of Wild Strawberries. Understand this. I still know, even now I don't know the significance of it. It's like, you see, if you pick up some typical Hindu detail from Hindu mythology, the foreigners may not know, may not understand that. So that is the reason why he said, you need to understand these things. You understand. I am not saying that one doesn't understand the film at all. You don't understand the film fully. All right?
Hello, can you hear me? I'm at the back. Namaste, I'm Kamala. I'm 18 years old and I am an aspiring filmmaker. I've been studying global cinema, classics of films, etc. Yeah. Okay. I personally feel a lot of classic filmmakers kind of sort of had an essence of how the future was going to be, or at least the way that they felt the need to sculpt that specific era of how people of that time thought. To kind of, talk to the future. Like I was seeing Godard's Breathless the other day, and the fact that they pose questions of love in it and how young people thought about love back then. Is love real? So that kind of put me in a pondering state that today, me as someone very young, trying to make movies and create my center of philosophy and to address political changes, it's such an hyper-connected environment. The fact that everyone has multiple layers of communication today has totally transformed how kids are being brought up, how I'm going to experience my adulthood compared to filmmakers did. So what is this sort of, I'm actually genuinely seeking advice to how maybe we can build better tools to center ourselves to create better art in this generation to address such multiple layers, which is a hyper-connective environment.
As Basav says, that we have to, figure it out ourselves. It's very difficult to say, give formula kind of thing. You just keep experimenting and keep yourself open to all kinds of influences. That's one thing, the filmmakers have to do it. We have to open up ourselves for all kinds of experiments, all kinds of, we have to expose ourselves for all things. It is true that today's generation and probably Satyajit Ray's generation or Bergman's generation face different challenges. And I have realized that, but I have no answers for that. I have no solution for that. You'll have to figure it out yourself.
The answer has to come from you, current generation, not from older generation. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Professor Nikhila and Girish sir, again, for this wonderful conversation. So for the final act, we have a film screening of Kanasemba Kudureyanneri, which is called Riding the Stallion of Dream. I always forget these English titles. I will just briefly introduce it. I think many of you probably would have heard of the film already. It's a film made in 2010 by Girish Kasaravalli, of course. And the film is set in northern Karnataka. Personally, one of my favorite film of Girish, for sure. That's why it's enjoying, in my curation, the prime time last film thing. And it's set in northern Karnataka, and it is possibly the most complicated structurally most complicated film in Kannada cinema, I would say, without much doubt. And of course, within Girish's list of films also, it's the most complicated film, I would say. Right? And the film, just to give an idea of what the film deals with thematically, it's a story about a couple, Irya and Rudri, and Irya, sorry? No, I'm just saying the story. It's a story about these two people, and Irya is someone who works as a grave digger in the village, right? And but thematically, the film actually deals with, like little bit Girish spoke about it, is the idea of belief and how we see belief of, say, someone from lower state of society versus higher state of society, and say someone, and how we question faith or belief of someone who's not in a powerful position in the society. So, the film kind of deals with it in a very complicated way. It's not, like he said, it's not linear structure. So it has a lot of back and forth, in temporally also, and spatially also. And so it demands a lot of attention from the audience, I would say. Also, the dialect is remarkably, enjoyable, because it's the northern Karnataka dialect, more Bijapur kind of dialect, I would say. Very rare in Kannada to have a film which is set in northern Karnataka. Most Kannada filmmakers do not, I think, even acknowledge the existence of northern Karnataka. So in that way, it's also important to watch. Yeah, so so that's why it's also a film to be watched, even for Kannadigas. And then I also feel one probably a little more detail is that the lead protagonist of this film, Vaidyanath Biradar, who shares my surname, is actually, he has acted all his life as this caricature comedian in commercial Kannada cinema, and here's a film where he pulls off a very remarkably complex, serious character. And that tells you also that how many of our artists are underutilized due to the compulsions of commercial framework that we enjoy, where we exist in, right? So yeah, these are the two little bits about it. So let's enjoy the last film, and one more round of applause for Girish, because I don't know if he'll stay back for the end of the film. Thank you so much.
Why I use that mythical symbolism is because, during 2009, there was this op movement, the movement led by Anna Hazare. And people started calling him Gandhi, new avatar of Gandhi. And I started wondering, can he be an avatar of Gandhi? Because Gandhi is a very, very complex person. Anna Hazare is not. So I realized it's not possible because we need to understand Gandhi and Gandhiism from a different perspective altogether. Not because somebody sits for a hunger strike for so many days, he can't be called Gandhi. So when I was thinking on these lines, suddenly it occurred to me probably I can reinterpret this short story by Kurmavatara. So it's a film not about, neither about Gandhi nor about Anna Hazare. It's the notion of Gandhiism, how relevant it is. Because, you see, Gandhi was talking about austerity in life, whereas what we have adopted in the post-globalization is a kind of a consumerist society. Can these two coexist? It's impossible to coexist because Gandhi is telling about certain kind of lifestyle, and the consumerist is quite opposite of that. For Gandhi, the ethics is more important than anything else. He said every profession should have ethics. If I am a teacher, my ethics is to welfare of the students. If I am a doctor, my ethics is to cure the people. But today that is not the case. We look at everything from the utilitarian value. We look for the utilitarian value. Materialistic compulsions make us take decisions. Do they coexist? Is it possible? Or the existing social structure is not at all conducive to Gandhian ideology. So I just wanted to highlight these things and see the intrinsic contradiction within our aims and the practice. And this short story by Kurmavatara gave me all that is needed, all the materials, all the angles that is needed. So now we are watching that. It's, I think, about 2 hours, 2 hours, 4 minutes or something like that. Please watch. I hope you find the film interesting. Yes.